A traveler's resume, while it seems like such a small, insignificant part of what it is that gets you the job, it's really pretty important. I mean, it just sounds really weird, but you'd think that all travelers' resume would just be pristine and perfect. They're not always. So I want to tell you what I've seen from my side of the desk and how that sometimes can or may not, I should say, break or get you the travel position you're looking for. We're going to talk about resumes on this week's edition of Travel Evolved. It's Travel Evolved. Welcome to the episode, everybody. I am Mark Holloway, your host. Kind of stumbled through that intro, but we got through it. I don't know why I was having such difficulty, but I was. Anyway, welcome to the episode. It's going to be a good one today. This episode is kind of important, and it's like I said in the intro. It really does seem like it's just a minor little thing, I guess, when it really comes to the big cog of all the things you guys are required to do to start looking, securing assignment, being ready for the next one. But resumes are, I've just, for 22 and a half years, I've seen how it is one of the most overlooked parts of our industry. And it's ridiculous because you guys have the ability to make or break yourself with just this piece of paper. And obviously it's not even paper anymore. It's an electronic situation you guys send off to. But we're going to talk about resumes a lot today because just listen to this episode once, burn it into your brain, and stay on it, because it will, I'm telling you, this will make a difference in you getting jobs you want, making, maybe potentially jobs that you want that are paying higher, the locations you're looking for. It's about beating your competition. Those poor travelers that just don't get a chance to listen to Travel Evolved, you guys are going to have a leg up on them. So anyway, I'm done shuffling and moving things around. We went, I don't know what it was. I don't know which episode it was. I want to guess it was the overtime episode. I don't know. But one of our episodes recently, and it's probably a combination of many of them, just kind of hit it. It doesn't happen so often where all of a sudden we're not doing anything different and all of a sudden things go really high, really fast. And that happened a few weeks ago. So we're committed, like I said, to trying to get these out every 6 days. I think we're on schedule to do that. Matter of fact, this is the last episode we're going to be recording in Denver. We're going to start recording from the West Coast for quite a while, about 4 months, I think, unless we decide to record some back here as some of us travel back and forth. We got a lot going on with my, the personal thing with my business thing, I should say. But it's not going to interfere with us getting the right content out for Travel Evolved. We've got some great guests lined up. Couldn't put them on today, probably not this next week, but I've got a bunch of people. I may do some in a row because we've got some really cool topics coming up. Really interesting guests, and I think you guys are going to find interesting both inside and outside of the travel industry that I think always try to bring something to Travel Evolved. So anyway, let's jump into this one because there's not a huge amount to this, but it's just, a lot of this, again, I'll qualify this for some of you. Most of this is Common Sense 101. Most of you guys are going to go, I know this already. I already know it all. But I really would urge you to listen to the whole thing because there could be hopefully something, as I always call my nugget, that you're like, I never thought of that. The first thing I want you to think about when it comes to your resume is you've got to really put yourself into the hiring manager's position. They're looking at you and they're looking for a compelling reason why you should be chosen over the number or dozens or hundreds of candidates that are being put in from the exact same job with similar experience. Obviously, I've always said this, if you've got a huge amount of experience, that's great, but don't also waste that with a really bad resume because it will knock you down. But especially for those of you that are in the mid-career and you're competing against people that look awfully similar to you on paper. resume can make a big difference. And again, I want you to start thinking about what it is that a hiring manager is looking for. And you guys know this. I don't care if you're allied, if you're nursing, they're looking for somebody that can hit the ground running. Think about that for a minute. They want to make sure that whoever they hire is not going to struggle with their system, with, if you're a nurse, with their charting, if you're in imaging, with their machinery, or how things are done or ran in that particular department. They're looking for great experience and someone that looks like on that resume that they have been doing this and can just hit the ground running. That's what they're hoping for. You guys can't fudge, and you don't, which I love about you. You guys can't fudge or don't fudge how long you've been doing this or how many assignments you've had. That's awesome. It kind of is built in the industry. So we can't really do an awful lot about your ability to be able to show more experience than you've had. We can focus a little bit about making sure that the experience you do have is really highlighted well. So if you are in one of those positions where you don't have a huge amount of travel assignments in your belt, or you don't have a huge amount of experience as a healthcare provider, you're going to have to, kind of polish that up a little bit. There it goes. Every time I hit it, I just have it so low. Anyway, and make your resume look as best as you can. Think about what the hiring manager is looking for. You're trying to give him or her a reason why you should get that phone call or get the auto offer, which we're seeing so often lately. So make sure your resume is geared for that. Make sure your resume says some things that would make someone go, yes. I mean, I can't sit there and give you examples that I could, but it would be either nursing or it'd be imaging or it'd be rehabilitation specific, and that would take a lot of time. But you guys know what I'm talking about. In all of your field, what is it that a hiring manager is looking for that you should have on your resume or you should eliminate if it's on there? So just as you're building your resume or as you're considering your resume, and I would urge all of you to go out and do that, look at that right now. What is about my resume that makes them go, yep, he or she's the one I want to make a phone call for? The best of the pile. The pile may be small, the pile may be huge, but what is it that's giving them, a compelling reason to call you? First and foremost, I know this is going to sound nuts, but I've said this for years. It blows me away how many travelers forget to update their contact information on their resume. I mean, I know this sounds like, what? You'd be surprised. Frequently, people change their cell phones. They change their emails. I get it. You're getting harassed by recruiters all day long, or maybe you're going through a divorce or a separation and you want to just kind of get rid of all that. Think about these things. Do you look at your email? Is that the email, and most of us have multiple emails nowadays, is that the email that you're going to see frequently? If someone's having difficulty getting hold of my cell phone, or they know they're not going to call, they're going to email me first, which I know does happen, to see if I'm available. Do I check that? Does that come to my smartphone? Wonderful things, these things. Does that come to my phone? Do I get a notification I've got some new email? And am I looking at that quickly? Because you guys know, when it comes to getting an interview, I've said this before, I'll keep saying it, I'll harp on this for the next couple of years. It's kind of a one shot. If you're not available, yes, they may wait a little bit. They might leave you a message. They may send you a text. They may send you an email. But if it's more than a little while, they're going to probably move on to the next candidate. Most of these men and women that are in the hiring position don't have a huge amount of time to wait to have you come back. They've got plenty of people in front of them. They've got a need. They've got the approval from the people that count the beans, so to speak, that says, yes, you can hire somebody at this rate. So they're going to go get it because they're the ones that are probably experiencing or feeling the pain of having their unit short-staffed. So remember, they're not going to wait around to check you to see, wow, this person's never even set up their voicemail or their voicemail's full. These are incredibly important things when you're in the interview process or in the submission or you're getting put in front of positions with multiple companies or with your favorite company. You got to make sure that your contact information is there and it's the right contact information. Your email is the one you get on your phone, that you're looking at your text, that your phone is available when, of course, you're not working, and that there's a voicemail set up. I know it sounds weird. You'd be surprised. And that it's not full. You'd be surprised. It's amazing to me how people, will go that. I mean, we all have voicemails like that. Mine gets completely inebriated. That's not the right word. That's the word for drinking too much. Annihilated. Totally different thing. Was that a Freudian slip? I don't think so. Mine just gets completely annihilated, where I get to the point where it just is so full that I've got to empty some things out. If I'm interviewing, which I'm not, I would make darn sure that somebody had the ability to leave me a message so I could check it instantly next time I had a break or when I woke up, if I'm a night person, and I was able to call them back. Again, I know this stuff sounds just fundamental, but here's me reminding it. If it is fundamental, just know that I'm reminding you. If it's not, make sure you go, oh yeah, I guess I'm kind of guilty of that, and I need to be more aware of that, because this could cost you thousands of dollars, or it could cost you the assignment you really wanted. You just don't know. It could be what's costing you not to be getting, phone calls or interviews, because you're going, what am I doing wrong? I'm a pretty solid candidate, but this could be why. So consider that openly and honestly. Okay, be detailed about your accomplishments and about your resume. I've seen this so often, and this just bears repeating if you've listened to anything I've done in the last 10 years. It's amazing how sometimes the better you are on paper, the more attractive you are on paper, in other words, the more experience you have, the more certifications, the better the candidate you are. It's amazing how sometimes that correlates to a little bit of an ego getting involved, saying, I am not going to take the time to sit there and detail my resume. I've been a traveler for 20 years or 10 years, and I've done this many assignments. I've done 35, 40 assignments, and I shouldn't have to go in detail. Okay. You know what my answer to that is. You may or may not need to. You just don't know. There could be somebody that's looking for that detail, and because you've decided that you're above putting that detail in your resume, you may be walking away from some positions. It's kind of crazy how often I've seen, it feels like the really super duper strong candidates that have, I get it, many travel positions under their belt, oftentimes will take that and they will shortchange themselves when it comes to a description of exactly what they're doing, right down from the dates, with not putting, the actual days of the week. You can't tell, but this person here 2 months, they're here 3 months, they're here 4 months, they do 6 months, to really getting a description of what it was that they were doing on that particular unit at that facility. If you're in Allied and you're, like I said before, if you're in imaging, what machines were you guys using? What were you proficient on? Seeing that's going to be important. If you were using a certain charting system, if you were an RN or an LPN, what did that look like? If you are, what kind of procedures? If you're a sterile processing tech, if you're a surge tech, what procedures was it that you were in there for? These are the kind of things that if you don't put them on there, how is a hiring manager going to know if you're a good fit for what it is that they do? Especially if you've done a lot of this stuff, you want to say, listen, you're covered with me. You got everything. I do it all. I have this kind of charting system. I have this sort of, I was doing high risk L&D at this assignment, not so much on this one. So they know that you can do that if you want to. Clearly, a lot of you guys will leave things off if you don't want to be hired for those reasons, for those jobs. I get that. But it's amazing how many people will kind of shortchange themselves by, I guess, transitioning or considering that their experience is going to oversee the detail that they need on their resume. And I'm just here to tell you that I don't believe that's true. You can have, by the way, multiple page resumes, and if you're a traveler, you're going to. It's electronic anymore. It's not a big deal. I mean, I'm old enough that, guys, I'm really going to date myself here now. Had to have a one-page resume. God, it had to be like an 80s thing. It was a thing. It really was a thing. Nobody wanted to be bothered with more than one piece of paper when they were considering you and you got their resume in probably the mail. Oh my gosh. What are you going to do? I mean, yeah, that's probably what it was. So you had to keep it short and sweet. You guys have an electronic situation where you can get detailed on this, especially for those of you that don't have the experience. Did I say yous? I don't think I said those of you. Those of you who don't have the experience. You really got to make sure that you are absolutely putting in some serious detail. And that is not to give excuse or leniency to those of you that have a lot of experience. I'm going to urge you guys to do the same thing. You will knock it out of the park. If you have huge experience and you're putting detail in, there's going to be no reason they wouldn't. They're not going to not be able to hire you. They're like, my gosh, look at this individual. Not only can I tell what he or she's done, but they're detailed. Oh my gosh. I mean, do you get it? It sounds insignificant. And I'm not telling you this. For those of you that have a resume like this, great. But for those of you that don't, I see it all the time, and you don't get hired like I believe you should. And I'm looking, going, I'm not going to fudge your resume. And most agencies don't take the time to write a resume for you. That's kind of one of the things that's on you. I guess I should have said at the very beginning that I also believe that you shouldn't want anybody else to look at your resume and to dictate your resume. You should be the one that's doing this because you're the one that has the most to win and the most to lose if the resume isn't perfect. Okay. I think I'm on that. I feel like I'm on a high horse and on a soapbox here today because it just, This is a great topic, and it's interesting because like I said, we scheduled this so long ago, but I have seen a lot of this lately. So it is very timely for me because it's like, oh, it's a really good time to start thinking about the fact that resumes sometimes come across and you're like, great candidate, until they do, and you're like, that's not going to be good. And there's nothing we can do about it as an agency most often besides add it to the profile that each agency is building, and cross your fingers and bless it and hope it does really well. That's about all that we can do. Okay, so on that, get rid of things that you don't need in your resume. You'd be amazed how many times I see a traveler's resume that still has a permanent mission statement. I'm looking for a permanent position, da-da-da-da-da. You're like, what? Well, why would you be on this travel thing? Nobody needs mission statements for the most part anymore, in my opinion. Get rid of that. You're a traveler. Let them see what you're looking at, because I'm telling you, if I don't say this again in this episode, this manager is probably giving this 15 to 30 seconds. Think about it. I'm not kidding. And I've hired a ton of people. You're looking at, again, depending upon what your specialty is, they're looking for bullet points that says yes or no or yes. And they're not going to sit there and read every single assignment you've had. If it doesn't pertain to what they do, they're going to skip it and see how many of them actually do pertain to what they do. And they're going to focus on those. So get rid of the fluff and guff. You don't have to tell them what you want to do for your whole life. You don't have to tell them really what clubs you belong to. I know a lot of people do that. If it's accreditation and it's education and it puts a feather in your cap because of your career, absolutely put it in there. But if it's about what you like to do in your spare time, or you're the president of your Rotary Club, or that does not need to be on there. It distracts, and I think it kind of takes the professionalism away. That's my personal opinion. There's going to be a lot of that on this episode, but if you're a traveler, give them your traveler bullets and the reason to hire you. So get rid of all the unnecessary stuff. Okay. Make sure it's up to date. I know this is a crazy one, but it's amazing how many travelers will be 1 to 2 assignments behind on their resume. It's amazing how many of them don't have access to the resume. Well, I didn't bring my laptop, or it's on my PC at home. And you're like, what? So you're going to wait till your assignment's over, get all the way home before you can update and put this last assignment? Meanwhile, the hospital's asking, what has he or she done for the last 3 to 6 months? And that's a real thing. It didn't used to be, by the way, when I first got in this industry, but for the last probably 10 years, it is something that they want to know what it is exactly that you've been doing for how long. Do you take time off or not? So when your resume is not up to speed, and I have people that apply with my company that sent us a resume a year ago, and I'm like, I can't do anything with this. You're not going to get hired. It's almost a waste of everyone's time. So just shoot me over a new one. I know you got one, and let's replace that with what we have currently, and it's going to make a huge difference, because you're probably not going to get, unless you're that great and they're that desperate, having the last experience be 6 months to a year or plus old, it's not going to probably fly. So keep it up to date. You guys should all travel with a laptop. You should have made enough money this last couple of years that you could have a laptop that you could be honestly updating your resume as you speak and on the assignment, so that even before it's halfway over, you could be getting that to your companies and saying, hey, make sure you put this on there. I want this new assignment to have on there. If I extend, we'll change the dates, but right now this has got to be up to date and current, especially with what you're doing. Lastly, I know this kind of seems a little silly, kind of a big pet peeve of mine. I see them every once in a while, where you see a resume that is in reverse chronological order. It starts off with the oldest job you had when you first got licensed or out of school, and the most recent is at the very back of the bottom. I really think, again, personal opinion, that that's a huge mistake. People are not going to go and back and look to see how you've progressed now at the very back of your resume. That should be, bam, here's what I've been doing. The first 4 or 5 assignments should be the most recent stuff that you've done. And I would also urge those of you that are kind of mixing in some of your permanent stuff with your travel, if you're going to be a traveler, I guess I should say, make sure that your resume shows all the travel assignments, and just keep it chronological. If you took a permanent job and we're doing that, maybe a couple of years ago, have it be part of that, but then show that travel stuff. Don't go back and forth. It's confusing, and it makes the manager kind of wonder, where's this person? What are they doing? Are they heading back home? Are they quitting? Are they going back to work on a permanent assignment? Just have it be chronological, in my opinion, from the most recent to what you did all the way at the very back, where your education, all that stuff should be as too. So I don't know why it feels like I feel like I'm angry today. I'm not. I don't mean it to come across that way. I feel like I'm like barking orders, like I'm some resume expert. I'm not. I'm just trying to give you guys, I think, some thought as to maybe some things you hadn't thought about, and I do believe this it's one of the few things that you're in control of. Like I said a few minutes ago, you're not in control of how long you've been doing this. You're not in control of how long your career is. You're not in control of, I don't know if where you get your education is that important for some of you, in your field or not. But there are things you have no control of. You certainly have control over how many people are applying to this position. We've talked about, chasing money and maybe going for things that are less popular because it should pay more. But you're not in control of a lot of the aspects of your career, which is kind of one of the downsides of being a traveler. I always talk about how great it is and how this is great and this is great, how you're lucky to have this, how you're lucky to have that. But a great resume is something you're in control of. So if I feel like I'm doing this, I guess I kind of am, but it's coming from love and it's coming from compassion, and I'm trying to help you because I do believe that this is one of those areas that just a little bit of attention, a little bit of focus is going to go a long way to helping you secure more of the jobs you want. So talking and sticking with detail, let's talk about, the unit type you're in. I mean, if it's important, you think that if you handled a ton, and a lot of you did, by the way, last few years, you were handling higher in nursing, for example, a higher nurse to patient ratio. If you were in rehab or you were in imaging, you might have been handling a lot more patient load per day coming through your department than you're used to. So let's talk about that. Thump your chest a little bit about that. Put those in there because those are actually good things. Not that it means you're going to want to continue with what was maybe for some of you some outrageous ratios. The fact that you were able to do it and you completed maybe 1 or 2 or 3 or 10 assignments that way, I think that sort of thing is important. Did you float? Now again, floating is a kind of a 5-letter, 4-letter word. But if you did it and you got through it, not that this means you're going to be asked to float again. So I think some of you are afraid to put that on there, especially in nursing. You're afraid to put that you floated into a different department because you're worried you're going to get floated in again. And there's some merit to that. Let's be frank. I was about to say I don't know if I believe that, if it's true. There is some thought to that, and I can't say if it's accurate or not. But I still believe that it might get you the job. And again, if you get a chance to interview, you can talk about, maybe if they say I hired you because you were able to float, you could say, well, I think I'm going to pass. I didn't enjoy that. I did it. But I think more often than not, it just adds more substance to what your career is if you, in fact, did float and got through it. And I don't necessarily think it's going to mean you're going to be asked it every time. But it might be what gets you the phone call over somebody else, and then you can kind of decide once you've had that interview whether or not this is an assignment for you based upon the conversation, which hopefully is an honest one from that hiring manager to you as to whether or not you're going to be required to float. But as I said, like ratios, extensions are important. I mean, I do believe that pointing out that I was asked to extend, sometimes you guys just put down a 6 month, I should say, or a 9 month assignment, and you don't even sit there and say anything about the fact that I was asked to stay and did in fact stay and completed 2 or 3 or more assignments at this facility. I think that speaks volumes. I mean, again, you guys are, and I think a lot of my guests have said this, you're hired help, or you're a hired gun, or you're a rental. I mean, I know you guys sometimes beat yourselves up more than most people do. But if that's the case, the fact that you were continually asked to stay at a location where they didn't have a permanent connection with you, they didn't feel obligated, right? Let's be honest, they don't. And they asked you to stay, that's important. Put it down. I was asked to stay twice or 2 times while the census was high, or during this, seasonality, or during, whatever it was they were experienced with, and they chose me to stay. That's an important part. So, okay. Let's talk a little bit about education. Again, I don't have a preference on where it shows up on your resume. You guys can have a preference. You can ask some other travelers what they like to do, but it needs to be in there. And you're like, well, of course it does, but people don't. People forget to put the school in there. They forget to put the date in there, or it's confusing that they started and they maybe took a break and then came back to it, or maybe that they actually got more than one degree, and it's kind of hard to tell which one was, for example, an ADN, which one was a BSN degree, and when it started and stopped. I think the most recent and highest level degree I think should be listed first, and then you should have it step down to what other times you got the other degrees that you're in. I don't think anything other than what's appropriate to this career should be listed as far as education goes, but you do need to say when you got it, where it was from, and what level it is, what actually is the degree, or what is the certification if you finished that course, like if you're a CNA or if you're a surge tech, that needs to be in there so people can very clearly and easily see exactly what you've got. I know it sounds crazy, but you would be surprised how oftentimes you're like, I can't tell if this person even has a degree or a certification or completed the course. So make sure it's really obvious that it's there. Same thing kind of applies with certifications. I don't need to go into a lot of detail on this, but if you have certifications in your field and you've got them, list them. If they're expired, take them off. And I would always tell you, don't let them expire. But if you haven't used them, you decide you don't want to have them or don't have them on there, because they're going to ask about it. You could be getting hired because of that particular certification, and to come to find out you don't have it, it's kind of tough on a recruiter because they don't know. They assume it's on there if it's listed. So make sure that you're putting your certifications on there that you have. Keep them up to date. As you add them, put more of them on there. If they happen to fall away and you don't have any more and you don't plan on renewing them, get them out of there. I know it's just kind of a simple thing, but it's amazing. And again, for some of you, certifications are something you should really be highlighting. Some of you are getting hired because it is a requirement of that facility. I always use ER as my example. A lot of PALs and TNCC are absolutely required. If it's not listed on your resume, they're going to assume you don't have it and keep moving on and go to the next person where they see both of them on there, and that's the person that's getting the phone call. If it's a requirement. So what you don't know is what's the requirement for certain hospitals. I know you're not going to fudge it or fake it, but man, if you got something recently, just happened. I'm saying this has happened maybe 5-6 months ago. Put it on there. Oh, I have that. Well, really? I don't see it anywhere. My person that was building your profile didn't see it anywhere, so we didn't know. So we didn't, they're asking, and it turned out that they did actually ask, and we had it. But how many times did that person get bypassed through us because we didn't look like they had it, and we were none the wiser that they would have. So that's on the traveler. That's not really on your recruiter or your agency for sure. Obviously, the same thing can apply to licensure. I put licensure down here. The same thing there. I mean, if you've got new licenses, great. Obviously, if it's a compact situation and more states are added, that's just going to be automatic. But don't let your license expire. If you have a couple that are maybe single state, keep them on there. Make sure they're accurate. If you've let them expire, there's no reason to put them on there. Having an expired license from a state doesn't do anybody any good. And for some states, believe it or not, it's actually more difficult to get a license again once it's expired than it is to just have it from the beginning. So there's a couple of states like that, and there still may be, I think, where showing that you have an expired license actually is a detriment, because it's like, oh, that's going to take even longer if the person never had it and let it expire. So be careful. Keep it up to speed. I already did talk about missing time briefly, but I want to talk about it again. This is a weird one. I think people definitely want to see, in our career, in our industry, I don't know what it is, but they don't want anything. They don't want to wonder anything. What has this person been doing for 2 months? In any other industry like mine, it'd be like, you wouldn't even care. I don't know, the person didn't have a job for 2 months. Big deal. But when it comes to travel, that is a huge, huge part of this. They want you working. If they don't, they want to know exactly what it is that you've been doing, whether you were taking care of somebody, you were taking some time off. Put it in there. Took personal time off, made a fortune the last 2 years and decided to go to, Europe for a while and live. I hope some of you got a chance to do that. Whatever it is, put it on there, and because we get calls and it holds up your hiring process, it puts you on a different pile, or maybe back at the bottom of the pile if there's a bunch of gaps in your employment and people can't tell. Like I say, I don't make the rules. I think it's kind of crazy, especially as a traveler where you don't have a career, that you should be able to have the right to have some gaps in your employment without it being, an inquisitory thing by everybody. Why, what's going on? But it is, and I don't make the rules up, but I'm here to tell you that it does affect some of you that don't have any kind of explanation or some sort of something that gives the manager a reason to go, okay, that's good, I'll keep him or her on this pile. So put it in there. Guys, you're in direct competition, like I said at the very beginning of this episode. You are in direct competition with everybody. It is important that you understand that. There's a lot of episodes that we do here in Travel Evolved that are hopefully help you get a leg up on your competition. And it's not going to be the people that are listening to this or watching this. It's going to be people that aren't. The people that have all the answers or just haven't had the time to join us or to talk to their peers. But everything that you do that you're in control of, you should be focusing on. Like I said in episode, I don't know, was it 2, 3, 4, 5? Early on in this series, it was treat this as a separate career. Treat this like it is. It's your own new career. It's like an own personal business. If you owned this business, you wouldn't just haphazardly show a mission statement of what your company was doing and just kind of half do it. No, you'd be serious about it. Same thing with this. This is your mission statement. Here's what it is that we are doing with me. Here's what I'm doing. Here's what I'm looking for. Here's what you should be looking for if you're going to choose me as your candidate of choice. And I hope you do, because here's what you're going to get. Bam, 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 bam. A resume for most of you is included with most agencies as part of the submission process. When you go in front of that hospital and you ask to be submitted electronically, a resume is almost always included. Now, I'm sure there's some companies that build their own and they do a kind of a work history. I've seen that. It's kind of a little bit weird. But I like companies that include your resume because it gives you the chance, like I've said, to kind of put yourself up a little bit better. So ask your company, do you guys include my resume, or do you guys just build one based upon, you build like an assignment, or should say a work schedule or a employment experience based upon what I've done? Because I think it's important, and I don't like the companies that don't really do it the right way. So it's just important. The more experience you have doesn't mean you shouldn't take this thing seriously. You want to make your resume stand out, and you want to have a resume be another reason to hire you, not anything that's going to say, I don't want to hire this person. I hope all that made sense. All right, a couple things on a side note. Like I said before, I'm going to grab that board and get out to the West Coast because that's my favorite, and I'm looking forward to being out there. It's got a lot of work going on personally, but we're going to continue to do episodes from here, just like we did, I believe, last year. Yeah, we did them last year out there. So nothing's going to change with that regard. Here's what I do think is going to change in the industry, and I'm going to throw this one out at you guys. I've said this before, and I'm going to really come out and say it. I believe that in a short-ish period of time, in the next 5 years, which really is a pretty short period of time, and I think sooner than later, travelers are going to start making a bigger piece of the pie than they are currently. And there's a lot of reason behind that. Here's what I will tell you. We can't dictate how big that pie is. If you don't know what I'm talking about, what's he talking about? Why is he talking about pies? Go back and look at the episode of the pie. The pie is the bill rate. Everything is sliced up based upon that. The traveler slice, in my opinion, right now, is smaller than it should be. And I think the agency side, in my opinion, is bigger than it should be. I believe heavily. I mean, it's like I know that's going to change. It's going to have to change because things are inefficient in our industry. We cannot dictate, like I said, how big the pie is. We can't dictate the bill rate. That is based upon supply and demand, and it's going to ebb and flow. It should increase as time goes by. It should increase and decrease as we have inflationary issues. But over time, it's going to get higher because it just does. What was 10 years ago a bill rate should be shadowed by what's a bill rate right now. I believe heavily you guys are going to start making more of it because I think the agencies are not evolving. They're wasteful. The way that agencies are ran, in my opinion, are completely inefficient. It just is. Right down from, everything. I don't care if you're marketing a company, the amount of money that agencies demand of that bill rate just to brand and market themselves is ridiculously high. Swag, all that kind of fun stuff that goes along with it, that is part of why they want so much money. If we're talking about, the recruiting efforts, huge amounts of money are spent on recruiter salaries, recruiter commissions for sure to convince you to take those jobs with this company, and don't look at it with any other company. That's a salesman's and salesperson's job. That's a huge amount of time. By the way, there's also a revolving door with most recruiters for most companies. I don't know many companies that are just so awesome and great at hiring. They hire 25 recruiters and they're the same 25 recruiters that are with them 10 years later. It's really impossible. So it's a revolving door. So there's a lot of inefficiencies with cost with the recruiting department, and it comes right down to coming out of why that piece of pie is so big for the agencies. Credentialing is another area that a lot of money is spent because hospitals are asking more and more and more of us, which means, if you go back 15 years ago, we barely had anything. Background check, pee in a cup, get a drug screen done, do a background, and send in copies of your certs, and we want your MMR and a TB. That was about it. And I'm not joking. The list is incredible now. So there's a lot of things that the hospitals are putting on agencies, of a lot of things that they're requiring of us, but it's still requiring some inefficiencies on agencies' part through credentialing departments and how inefficient that is. And that is another reason why agencies are taking such a big piece of pie. Payroll's the same kind of thing. Retention's the same kind of thing. All these things come into play, and all of these things are excuses but legitimate excuses as why the agencies have to demand such a large piece of the pie. And I believe that's going to change. You guys know, those of you that know me know what I'm talking about, but it just doesn't make sense. The way this whole industry fluctuates and flies right now is archaic and nuts, and it costs you guys money every single hour that you're working because of the inefficiencies of the way things are done. And nobody wants to look at it. And if they do, they're like, oh, I'm scared of that, or they want to dump and you know what, all over it because it's changed and it scares them. If you see any haters of me or haters of companies that are doing things uniquely or at least looking at unique approaches, the reason the hate is there is because we're scaring the hell out of some people that are worried about having to change the way they do things because they've been making so much money. They love it. Don't change it. Don't change it. And people like me scare them. And it shouldn't be the case. We're not the bad guys. It's going to happen eventually and naturally. Our industry is just one of those unique ones that it is so far behind technology and the times that it's remarkable. It's one of the most untouched industries that I've ever seen. And I was in there too. I couldn't see the forest of the trees until you see the forest of the trees and you actually are looking at the trees going, wow, these trees are, wow, what am I talking about trees for? These trees don't make sense. This whole industry, when you really break it down, is ridiculously inefficient. And everything that we're doing right now, or has been done, doesn't really help a traveler. It just increases the amount of cost that eventually hospitals have to pay to justify all the processes that take place in order to bring you and convince you to take that assignment through XYZ hospital. So we're going to have some fun this summer. We're going to talk about some detail. We're going to come out and really start walking through some things as to what the problem is with this industry and how specifically to fix it. And it's coming there. So guys, I hope this episode was helpful. Again, I hope it's one that you go back and listen to every once in a while. Keep your laptops and your resumes handy with you. Update them. Look at them right now after this episode's over. Go just mentally look at it and think, is it time for me to do a change? Does it need to look better? Do I have too many distractions on there, things that aren't there? Do I need to put some more detail in there? Spend a couple of hours on your career and it will pay off immensely. You will start getting more positions. Mark my words. Put some comments down below if it's not true, but show me that you made some changes, and maybe the fact that you're starting to get calls where you weren't before because you were getting a little bit complacent or just didn't think you needed to. I hope you do. Guys, as always, I appreciate it. I'm going to grab that board. I'm going to zip out to the West Coast. I'll catch you next time on Travel Evolved.